Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marco, and today I'm gonna show you how to make these procedural mountains in Blender. You can see that with a slider we can change the look and feel, for example by increasing or decreasing the amount of rocks. Controlling the height with a simple slider is easy, and being it all procedural means you can edit and adjust anything you want. Without further ado, let's jump straight in and open Blender. So let's delete everything and open a shader editor area on the left. Let's add a plane object to the scene and scale it up to 1 kilometer. Apply the scale. Edit the clipping of the viewport so we can see the whole object. Now add a sky texture. Set the contrast in the color management panel to high contrast and lower the exposure value. Switch to the Modifiers tab and add a Subdivision surface modifier. Also enable Adaptive Subdivision. Switch to the Materials tab and set the Displacement method to Displacement only. Also set the dicing rate value of the viewport to 2. Let's start creating the material by adding an Object Coordinates node. Connect a Noise texture and use a Mix Color node to distort the object coordinates with the noise. Add a Voronoi texture. This will be used for the base shape of our mountains. Multiply it with a value node that we are going to name to height. Add a displacement node, connect our output to the height and connect it to the displacement socket of the material output node. Let's increase the altitude of the sun. Now let's add a power node and set it to 2 to give our mountains a nicer steep slope shape. Add a noise texture and a mix color node to distort the object coordinate. Add a Voronoi texture and set it to distance to edge. This will be used for the shape of the water rivers. Increase its contrast using a map range node. Multiply it by the base mountain's shape. Set the map range method to smooth step. For the rocks, add an object coordinate node and connect a Voronoi texture set to distance to edge. Add a noise texture set to 2D. And connect a map range node. Add a value node and name it Rocks 1. This will be the slider which allows to control the amount of rocks. Multiply the map range with our Voronoi texture and add it back to our mountain's shape. Let's also decrease the height of the rocks by multiplying them with a small value. Let's do the same for smaller rocks. Add an object coordinate node and connect a Voronoi texture set to distance to edge. Add a noise texture set to 2D and connect a map range node. Add a value node and call it rocks2. This will be the slider which allows to control the amount of smaller rocks. Multiply the map range with our Voronoi texture and add it back to our previously created map. Let's also decrease the height of the rocks by multiplying them with a small value. Now, to give our mountains some distorted tops, let's add a noise texture and increase the contrast using a map range node. Multiply it by the base shape of the mountains using a map range. In the end, add it back to our generated shape. Let's also decrease its effect by multiplying with a lower number. For smaller trees, let's add an object coordinates node, connect a noise texture, and set it to 2D. Then use a map range to increase the contrast. Let's add another noise texture and set it to 2D. Setting it to 2D is good as it uses less computer memory. Add a map range to control the contrast. Multiply them together. Multiply it by a lower number to decrease the height of the trees. Finally, add it back to our generated map. Let's decrease the height of the trees a bit more. Now that we are done with the displacement of the geometry, let's give the mountains some color. Alright, add a noise texture. Increase the contrast with a map range node. This is gonna be used for the grass color. To give 2 green variations of color to the grass, add a mix color node. Set one color to dark green and the other to light green. A bit darker. Connect it to the base color of the principal node. Duplicate the mix color node. Now add a normal coordinates node, connect a dot product, and set the z component to 1. This will give us the topmost parts of the mountains. We use a less than math node to get only the parts with a specific slope. Set it to a node group and rename it to rocks. Connect it to the factor of the mix color node. And set the color to blue for now. Add another noise texture with a map range for the contrast. This one is going to be used to give variations to the color of the rocks. Connect it to the factor of a mix color node and set the 2 colors for the rocks. One, for example, dark pink, and the other gray. Connect it back to our previous mix color node, and there we go. We now have grass and rocks, but we also want trees, so let's duplicate the mix color node and set the color to a dark green. Connect the trees map range node to the factor of the color. Now for the water rivers, we want to have a wet dark color, because underwater stuff looks dark because of physics. To do so, let's add an object coordinates node and separate the XYZ components. Take only the Z-axis and use a map range to determine the range we want the rivers to be. Duplicate the mix color node. Put the nodes into a node group and name it underwater. Set the mix color node operation to multiply. This will multiply the two colors instead of mixing them, so we can darken the previous colors. For the roughness, we use a noise texture and a map range to control the contrast. Add a mix node and use the rock's output as a factor to control the mixing, as we want a different roughness for grass and for rocks. Finally, connect it to the roughness of principled. Duplicate the mix node and use the underwater output as a factor. This allows to give a more glossy wet look to the river bottoms. Add a noise texture and connect it to the height of a bump node. In the end, connect the bump to the normal of principled. And there you are! You made it! Thank you for following me. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Now you can play and have fun with a completely customizable procedural mountains shader. See you in the next video.